Parax Radio, programming for the open mind.
And welcome back, everybody, right here to the Paranormal View on the Parax Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight, those in the chat room and those listening from around the world. We appreciate each and every one. Tonight we have with us Barbara Duncan.
Hello, everybody.
And we have Jeffrey Gould.
Hello, hello.
And speaking of listeners from around the world, Barbara, where do we have listeners at tonight?
They're all over the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and the Netherlands.
The Netherlands. Haven't heard from them for a while.
Yep.
Then we're in Dutch with them.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
And we have heard of the unknown either for a while, so no telling where he's at. Want to welcome back tonight our guest, right, Jeff?
Yep.
Who is it?
It's Kat Klockow still, pretty much like just before we went to break.
It's me!
All
I
right.
am your guest.
Well, good, because I'm glad. I know.
So yeah, getting back to Kings Island, you had asked me if we were going to anything about Coney Island.
Right.
And there aren't a whole lot of ghost stories that immediately come to mind. It gets flooded often.
Yes.
But the Racer roller coaster originated at Coney Island and was moved to Kings Island, and it has a ghost boy attached to it that park attendees and people who work there at the park have reported seeing this ghostly little boy asking for his parents around that roller coaster. So there is a suspicion that he came along as basically as a hitchhiker along with the roller coaster when it was moved. But for Coney Island, I don't hear a lot of ghost stories from there.
Oh.
Now, there are a lot in Covington, Kentucky, and Newport, which we didn't cover a lot of in this book. But maybe for the second book, we can talk about some of the haunted mansions that are in Covington. Or some of the old buildings that were speakeasies and brothels in Newport.
Well, you had some other places around up here in Middletown. You had the Sorg Opera House.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, they don't do any investigations there anymore. It's been refurbished, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't blame people who are property owners or managers for wanting to be hesitant on paranormal investigators, because you have to have a staff member with them so nothing weird happens. Because, there are ghosts.
Don't you want weird things to happen?
Okay. Yes. You want paranormal things to happen.
Yeah.
Not
People breaking
people
legs.
falling, you don't want people accidentally falling down the stairs or having accidents, or weird hijinks. I've gone on investigations before where other members of the group, now this was a paid investigation, this was not one where I was brought in as an actual investigator. I had paid to go to this place, and people in my party whom I did not know came super high. So of course they were seeing everything. So they were seeing the time knife.
Wow.
Time knife?
If you watch The Good Place, you will know what the time knife is.
I've watched The Good Place. I don't know that reference. Is that in one episode?
Chidi sees the time knife and he comes back super weird. Yeah, anyway, go see it. Rewatch it.
Which season?
I think it's the second to last one.
Okay, I'll have to.
Yeah. Jeff will have to.
There's
I've
a lot
seen
of
every
good
episode.
stuff.
I love the show.
Yeah. Or you could. I don't know. I was going to try to sneak in a Doctor Who reference, but
You can.
I can't come up with one that fast. We got an hour. We'll fit one in.
Okay. How often are you going to try and do your podcast?
Well, we do our podcast weekly.
Okay.
So we record every week, and we have enough time. That gives us enough time to do kind of any research and film any interviews or anything we want to include. And since it's on YouTube, it's very visual. It's not just listening like this wonderful podcast. You just get to hear our not dulcet tones. We have angelic tones and timbre coming through your ears whenever you're working. Well, with Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities Hometown Haunts, you get to see things too, because we're trying to really support artists and writers in our area as well. So we're not just telling ghost stories, but sharing like horror artwork or with Carrie that was on her book. And
so you bring in examples of their work.
Yeah, exactly. So I really love that aspect of the podcast as well. We do want to just have it on iTunes eventually, but I think it is really a work that works best on YouTube. So we're trying to figure out some things for Halloween, because that's a Saturday that we could do.
And a full moon.
And a full moon.
It's a blue moon
It's
full
going to be
moon.
a very active Halloween.
Woohoo.
Like, just on that front. As for trick-or-treaters, no. There weren't any that came by my house normally on any other.
Post
So I just
saw.
ate an entire pound of candy myself just sitting on my stoop.
Well, there's a interesting photos on Instagram of candy delivery systems. One just shows a slingshot, like Dennis the Menace's, Y-shaped slingshot, a candy delivering system for Halloween. Another shows a long staircase from the house, and there's like just a PVC pipe going down to the gate, and a little, like you wait for somebody to just drop a Snickers down, and it'll drop in the bucket for them or something.
I could do that because I live on a hill.
There you go.
But I really would love to see people, because we do have a lot of downtime now sheltered in place. This is time for your Rube Goldberg to come out and create the weirdest little contraptions to deliver candy from one person to another.
Oh yeah.
That would be wonderful, but we'll see. At the moment, our Halloween solution is putting out tiny little solo cups, like, the ones that are only about 2 inches tall that you would use for, like, brushing your teeth.
Just let them pick up a cup.
Fill those with candy and putting them on the sidewalk. And just waving at people from our porch.
You watch the raccoon say thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a possum, too. I don't mind feeding the possum, but the raccoons, we do have a family of raccoons.
Wow.
There you go.
Yeah. Not in our house. They live in the street.
I'm feeding a young raccoon, bottle feeding her right now. I've been for weeks.
Cute.
Oh. I got a question from the chat room from Tabby Cat. She wants to know, have you ever been to the Lorraine Palace Theater? I guess that's, Lorraine, Ohio, maybe? I don't know. I don't know where it's located.
The Lorraine Palace?
Yeah. That's what she said, the Lorraine Palace Theater.
Oh, well, I'm looking it up right now. And Lorraine, Ohio, I'm seeing water, so it's not around here.
In the river. It's sunk.
No, our river is...
Maybe it's underwater.
So it's in Lorraine, Ohio, which is just like an hour west of Cleveland. So no.
Oh, no.
I have not been up there.
No.
That is an easy, 6-hour drive from my house.
At least, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's on the exact kitty corner opposite side of the state.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So, but that's an interesting place to go. I could talk to my friend James Willis. I'm sure he's visited there because he wrote Weird Ohio and a bunch of other spooky books. But yeah, no, I have not been up there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so she sees it. She knows now.
Yes. Yeah,
Well,
we're trying to concentrate mostly around the tri-state region. So you're looking at southern Indiana, northern Kentucky, and southern Ohio, southwest. We're borrowing Mothman because that's just an awesome tale.
right.
And then also Serpent's Mound because it's in between where the Mothman is at the Silver Bridge and Cincinnati. So, and we have we know people who have experienced paranormal events along the Ohio River in their personal homes. but there's so much history, especially with Cincinnati. We have, and we didn't even dive into it in this particular issue, the Prohibition, all of the bootleggers that would have, like, the systems that were around here, like all the bonded distilled whiskey, like 80% of it was created within a 300-mile radius of Cincinnati. So you have all these bootlegger kingpins that all lived in Cincinnati and Newport. And before Las Vegas became a thing, we had Newport, Kentucky, which was known as Sin City after Atlantic City? And before Las Vegas, we had Newport, Kentucky. And so almost all of Newport downtown were speakeasies and brothels. And all of them are haunted, from what I understand.
Oh, well, yeah, those from those days, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, isn't unless I'm getting I'm not much of a drinker, so I'm just trying to figure. Isn't whiskey and bourbon kind of the same thing, but bourbon is from a specific location?
Yeah, I'm not a connoisseur of that either. So
Bourbon is only from Kentucky.
Yes, it is.
There you go.
Mhm.
Okay.
thank
Whiskey
you.
Well,
is from Scotland.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
but you can distill whiskey in Kentucky too.
You
But
can.
we got a lot of bourbon, and they're cousins basically, if I
Pretty
understand.
much.
Yeah. But what
But
we
bourbon
had
is only done in Kentucky.
Kentucky. Yeah. Yeah, so but what they would do, a lot of these kingpins, they would make their own bonded whiskey and sell it within a pharmacy. So you were still getting whiskey or bourbon, but it was as a medicinal thing instead of just booze that you could buy anywhere. So that's how the loophole they use a lot around here for getting through the Prohibition, the Volstead Act.
I always like
So-
coming across those ancient ads where they say for toothaches and tooth pains and for children, use cocaine.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
some of those cold medicines would. They had pretty much everything in it. Yeah.
Yeah, they flew you to the moon. That's why I think, I'll be honest, looking back at medical history, up until easily the 80s, everyone was basically high from
Oh,
something.
yeah.
And we have so many ghost stories, and some people have asked me, why is there a tapering off of modern ghost stories? And there seems to be two reasons for that. There is, one, people aren't taking as many recreational drugs. It's a lot more tight than it used to be able to get those kinds of drugs. Like, not everyone's on cocaine. It's not in Coke anymore. You can't, but you got other things. But also, you have kind of a decade or so buffer between when something happens and when people start creating ghost stories associated to that. So there's two things happening here. Like, here in Cincinnati, we had the Beverly Hills Supper Club. Have you ever heard of this?
Yes.
Yeah. Terrible, terrible accident.
Fire killed, I forget how many people.
I am quickly looking it up.
Yeah.
So, May
It
28th,
It was 50, 60,
1977.
something like that.
1977, during the Memorial Day holiday weekend, a total of 165 people died and more than 200 were injured as a result of this blaze that took out this, it was a social club in Southgate, Kentucky. And they're trying to make this area a memorial right now. A developer tried to buy the land to make condos, and the families came together and kept that from happening. But this is a place where there are no ghost stories ever told because it's such a traumatic location. And you have family members that are still alive that remember this happening, that there are no ghost stories that are going to be told about this place for easily 100 years. Now, 150 years, 200 years from now, we'll see. But right now, that's just a no-go.
Wow.
Yeah. So we won't be including it in any version of Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities.
What about the train station there in Cincinnati, the museum?
Oh, Union Terminal?
Yeah, Union Terminal. Isn't there a lot of stories with that?
Yeah, there are. You have a lot of phantom visitors, a lot of phantom train sounds. It's for those of you who are not in Cincinnati, it's where our Natural History Museum and Children's Museum and Omnimax Theater is now. They made it into a museum center. And but yeah, people have seen not seen phantom trains, but heard phantom trains. I believe there is a ghostly janitor. But people have seen just ghosts of people walking around, heard things. Mostly it's docents and staff that work really late at night who are running into these phantoms, basically. But it would be a good location. It's also the inspiration for the Justice League, the Hall of Justice. The artwork
Superman. That's where Superman hangs out, right?
Yeah, so the Justice League cartoon, they have the Hall of Justice. That is a Cincinnati Union Terminal.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
See, you learned something.
Yeah. Cincinnati has a deep comic book past. So, and a deep ghost story past, too.
Yeah.
We have a lot of ties to historical authors like Lufcardi O'Hearn, who he worked at the Cincinnati Enquirer when the Cincinnati Music Hall was being built. He wrote stories about the skeletons and the bones that they were pulling out of the earth around the Cincinnati Music Hall. And some of his writing, he's very flowery in his language. So I don't have the quotes in front of me, but I remember reading, "The yellow tanned bones of those who had died decades ago were unearthed from the pit that is now the Cincinnati Music Hall." And he just goes on very flowery about describing these skeletons they were pulling out. But he eventually moved to Japan, married a Japanese woman, collected ghost stories from Japan, and translated them. So the first ghost stories from Japan we ever got were from a once Cincinnati area writer.
I thought you said that they're very tight-lipped about ghost stories in Japan.
Well,
or ghost experiences, maybe.
Ghost experiences, not so much ghost stories. That's why you kind of hear Okiku and the Well so many times, which is the inspiration for The Ring.
The Ring, yeah.
Yeah, that's one reason why I keep kind of running into that. They also have motifs that they like to recycle, just like with urban legends. A lot of revenge stories with females against males, like wives that were murdered by their husbands come and haunt their husbands. Or with Okiku in the Well, it's a woman who was basically sexually harassed by a samurai. He kills her, so she haunts him. So you get a lot of revenge stories, the ghost stories from Japan.
Now, as a cultural thing, I know in America when they do like ghost stories, they'll do the makeup sort of like a weird pale blue, sort of like loss of blood. But in Japan, what really apparently terrifies them is like almost a pure white.
Mm-hmm.
So when they use the same actress in the Japanese version of The Ring, or The Grudge, I would say, and then when they did the American version, they used the same actor, the same Japanese actors from the Japanese version, but they did the makeup different. In Japan, they were like much more white, and here they were a little more grayish blue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just perceptions of how you have a lot of, I'm going to call it shorthand, visual shorthand. We use it a lot in comics. Basically, for us, yeah, it is. If you want to very quickly say that somebody is dead in America, like you said, you paint them kind of that blue, loss of blood-ish coloring. Japanese are white, but also with in Japan, you may see a little. It looks like a tiara that is paper and has a little white triangle. And it used to be in some of the funeral processions. Okay, this is a really good example of shorthand. So they would have this little paper hat, basically, or tiara that they would put on the dead. And so whenever you see ghosts in Japanese media, they're usually wearing this little paper tiara that looks like a triangle. Meanwhile, Westerners, we tend to bury our people with burial shrouds. So you have the ghost with like the white sheet with the holes poked through it. So when you're doing cartoons of the two, if you have an American audience, you're going to use the white sheet. And if you have a Japanese audience, you're going to use the little paper triangle tiara hat and a white kimono. Because if you try to use a little white ghost sheet in Japan, they're going to look at you like, what is this, Swiss cheese? Like, they don't have that cultural context unless it's like through maybe like Charlie Brown's Halloween.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah, like now
lost
they may, but a few decades ago, before there was so much media interchanging, they would have just looked at this and gone, what is this? This doesn't, it looks like a piece of cheese or Swiss cheese or a ratty towel. Versus, and then if you show it to even today to an American, the Japanese ghost, they may not understand that that's supposed to be a ghost, other than the fact it may not have legs. But
as long as it's not like the weird ghosts in the movie House, the Japanese movie House.
I
You've
have
seen
not
that,
seen
right?
that one. No.
Oh, it is hilarious. I mean, it's got some moments, but I kept watching him like, what? Who thought this up? What drugs were they on? Because it has literally a man-eating piano. And I was like, what possible, how is this supposed to be scary? And I did some background, I came across some background articles, and apparently the director went to a school or two and asked the students what scared them. And one of the kids came up with, the idea of a piano they had to practice on eating them. And others were saying stuff about, cut off heads, which is why one of the people who gets decapitated, the head comes back and is biting them on the backside. And it's very almost Benny Hill level horror, as it were. And I'm thinking, well, okay, if it's literally suggested on ideas by children, that makes sense, because now it's still weird and very surreal and dreamlike. But it certainly explains why it's not really scary.
Yeah. Huh.
You'd like it. It's very over the top weird.
It sounds very campy.
Yeah, it sounds weird. Yes.
It is very weird.
Yeah.
That could be fun, though.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we used to do a place in downtown Hamilton, Ryan's Tavern.
Yes.
We did our show from there a few times, and there is things that's supposed to be in that building. Well, Ryan's Tavern is no longer there.
Yes.
It's now some other kind of a restaurant, and they don't allow anybody doing any investigations. But that was that whole area, just because of the history of it from the bootlegging era, the mafia, because they had tunnels that would run all the way down High Street under the buildings. And,
Well, John Dillinger used it as not Ryan's Tavern, but he had a hideout
right.
not too far away
Yes.
from downtown Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that, like I said, we can explore more of Cincinnati's weird past through these books. I did want to introduce our illustrators a little bit better, because I know I've mentioned them throughout the episode,
Yes.
but we do have a great group of people for this first issue, and just going to read on a little bit about this. So the Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities is a 36-page comics anthology exploring paranormal lore of 6 locations in the Cincinnati region. The stories range from hauntings to cryptids to urban legends. The comic about Saddamsville Rectory is based on an actual experience by myself. I am Kat Klockow. I am the editor of this wonderful anthology. We also have a great team of artists and writers that worked on 6 locations. Jay Callagayan and Dylan Spieg were the creative team. They also create Mest, which is based off of the Cincinnati Metro Sewer District. They give their take on the famous cryptid scene in the 1800s in Vevey, Indiana, and their take of Mermaids of the Ohio River. Brandon Wagner tells of the stories that make Cincinnati Music Hall one of America's most haunted places in music hall horror. Tim Fuller has a humorous look at Loveland's beloved cryptid, the Loveland Frogman, in Froggy Went to Courtin'. Christina Wald Satan's Hollow takes a lighthearted look into the urban legend of a portal to hell opened in Blue Ash drain system. Rodney Fike writes about the man behind the haunted Loveland Castle, who is rumored to still walk its halls. And myself, I share my own terrifying experience investigating Sedamsville Rectory and why I will never return. So this is available through Kickstarter right now. You can go to Kickstarter.com. And just type in the search area Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities. It will come up. It has a wonderful flaming skull on the cover, surrounded by the Loveland Frogman, the creepy priest from Sedamsville Rectory, the Loveland Castle, and I can't see the last one. Oh, and the creepy ghost from the Cincinnati Music Hall. Oh, and a big green mermaid.
Big green mermaid, huh?
Yes, a big green angry mermaid. Because I'm going to be honest, the mermaids of the Ohio River are angry. They're not those happy Atlantic ones. They're much more disgruntled.
Yeah, when we did an event down there at Music Hall one time, and I think you were there selling your books, but you weren't affiliated with the show then. This is before you started doing the Paranormal View, and there is things there. The bodies and stuff. Are they still digging up the bodies out of the basement?
Well, they don't actively excavate them out, but there are bodies buried there that were excavated and then basically studied and then put back. And then there was another 203 tons of bones that were excavated out and then donated to the University of Cincinnati for study. So they've had a few different remodels, which every single time has brought up tons and tons of bones. I mean, literal tons of bones. When they brought up when they made Washington Park, which is the park, beautiful public park right across the street, when they remodeled that and added the parking garage underneath it, it was just bones. Because that property had a lot on it from the early 1800s. So the first state Ohio lunatic asylum was there, is where Cincinnati Music Hall's southern wing is located now. That's where Ohio's first lunatic asylum was established. And then after that, they built up an entire little campus of basically special needs buildings. So you had an orphanage, you had a pauper cemetery, you had an infirmary, and then you had another lower level insane asylum that was built there. And at the time, Music Hall was quite a ways away from downtown Cincinnati, a good mile away or more. And it was beyond the outskirts of the city. But the city grew very rapidly because we have a great beer brewing history. We are a meat packing, at the time at least, a meat packing hub. I mean, Cincinnati is known as the Queen City. It's also known as Porkopolis because we were the pork meat packing capital of the Midwest for a while. And we have a lot of trains, and we also have a lot of ferry and activity on the river, and boat activity and barges. So our main area was all along the river, and so it made sense for the pest house and the orphanage and all of the stuff that people didn't want around them. It was put outside the city. But the city grew so rapidly that suddenly people were abutting this pauper cemetery and living in apartments and buildings right next to the infirmary and the orphanage. So they eventually raised them and moved the people even further out west, where Spring Spring Grove Cemetery is. A lot of those bodies were removed there. The living were moved over to St. Bernard and that neighborhood and around there, or even further away from Cincinnati into different towns altogether. And they just, instead of really removing a lot of the bodies that were really deeply buried there, they just built on top of them. So whenever they add an elevator, or they just did a new renovation from 2015 to 2017, there was a lot, they still removed more bodies from there. And ghostly activity is still quite common in Cincinnati Music Hall and in Washington Park. Little known fact, next to the dog park in Washington Park, you see 3 original headstones that they never moved.
Really?
Yeah. And I remember there was this, I'm going to be honest, it was a guy I didn't know came up to me when I was waiting to cross Elm Street. And he's just like, "Hey lady, how's it going?" He was clearly trying to pick me up. And I remember looking over to him and go, "Do you know how many bodies are buried under us right now?" And he just takes one look at me, takes a swig of his beer, and just walked away. Because the area is in over the Rhine neighborhood, which is a very popular restaurant and bar district now, with some very good restaurants and bars.
Yeah.
So in the entire over the Rhine neighborhood has a lot of history to it. It's actually where, Jeff, you'd be interested. Whenever they can't afford to film in New York City, they use Cincinnati because for like period pieces, because the over the Rhine neighborhood has the largest collection of German influenced buildings that is similar to New York City from like 1960 on earlier. So it's really common, and it helps that George Clooney is from Cincinnati. Whenever they do a lot of period films, they'll use Cincinnati as a backdrop. That or Cleveland. Like, Cleveland's all over the Avengers franchise.
Cleveland is old, period.
Yeah. But we have, like, if you want to do a long establishing shot, you can do it in Cincinnati because the architecture has remained the same. And they just did this huge initiative to renovate all these buildings. So they made them period appropriate.
Well, now, isn't there a place right across the river there in, was it Covington, where it's like a little German village or something like that? That's,
Mainstrasse.
Yeah. And that is totally old also.
Yes. And they have a wonderful little Oktoberfest.
Yes.
Mainstrasse, I do know that they have, it's Mainstrasse Village, and I'm typing, sorry. They have a wonderful oddities shop, and I forget what the name of it is right off the top of my head. But it is this wonderful little oddities shop that if you want to get taxidermied anything, you can find it there. If you want to find the bones of anything, you can find it there. Just anything your gothic little heart desires, that store has it.
Norman Bates brings in Mom. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, now, didn't they have an old amusement park that was right across the river in Covington there?
I don't know.
It's more toward the western tip of Covington, I guess. It used to be a big amusement park here. I've heard stories about it where that area is supposed to be haunted.
I'm looking it up right now to see, and the only one I really remember is Coney Island, but that's on
that's
Ohio
on Cincinnati side. No, this one was across the river over in the western end of Covington.
There's something that was called Ludwig Lagoon.
Yeah, it's somewhere, I think, around in that area, I believe.
Park?
It looks like it used to be an old amusement park.
Yeah.
Yeah. That one I'm not so familiar with. And this one I have to apologize because I'm not from Cincinnati, so a lot of that super old history I don't know.
Yeah.
So, or I haven't come into that. But I'm always interested in doing that. I consider Cincinnati my new hometown. So, I love learning more about it.
Okay, I got another question from the chat room. It's from Tabby Cat,
Hmm.
and she wants to know if you've ever heard of the ghosts that are supposed to haunt Lick Road, Lick, Lick Road.
Oh, yes, Amy of Lick Road. This was an interesting case. We will not be writing about it. And I know Christina's heard me talk about this before. So Amy of Lick Road is a fascinating true crime, and I almost included it in my book, Ohio's Haunted Crimes, but because she has living family, I decided not to. So this is an interesting situation where we have a ghost story that is literally keeping a cold case alive. And I don't have the details in front of me, but what happened was in the late 70s, when you had Dahmer being very active and a lot of other serial killers roaming the American countryside, there was this girl, and Amy was her name, and she went to a party with a bunch of friends, and this is when hitchhiking was very common. And so she goes to this, she goes first to pregame at a local bar, a dive bar, with her friends. And she's a high schooler. And then she had a jacket on at the bar, got hot, and then took it off, put it on a chair, forgot about it, and then went to a house party with some friends. And she, of course, wasn't driving. So she gets to the house party, she has fun, she has a lot more drinks, realizes that she doesn't have her jacket, and decides to hitchhike back to the dive bar that she had been, because that's where she would have left it. And she does get a ride. Reports say that she did arrive at the bar, she fetched her jacket, and then she was going to hitchhike back to the friend's house to continue partying. And this is where she goes missing. According to witnesses, and mind you, I'm doing this all from memory. According to witnesses, a few guys that were in a VW Bug, I believe it was orange, it may have been yellow, picked her up, and they were going to take her back to the house party. She was never found alive again, never seen alive again. Her body had been found the next day. She had been sexually assaulted and murdered and left in a ditch at the side of the road. However, that was not where she was killed. Law enforcement had discovered that she most likely had been killed at the end of Lick Road, and there's a large state forest preserve at the end of Lick Road. There still is. And it crosses, but I think it's Warren and Hamilton counties in Ohio. So we have a girl who was brutally murdered and raped, and her body left to just rot next to a road. Oh. Thankfully, she did not. She was found very quickly and returned to her family, and services were held. Interesting thing is that the area of Lick Road where she had been killed was considered a lover's lane, still is to this day, and people who go there will report seeing this girl, and they describe her as being a young girl dressed in 1970s outfit, because she was wearing a skirt with a denim coat, and she'll knock on the doors, and kind of like a vanishing hitchhiker, she wants to get in, but usually the kids who are there won't, and they'll just drive off. It has gotten intertwined with the ghost story of if you flash your headlights 3 times, Amy will show up, or if you put dust of flour or dust your bumper, you'll find handprints of either Amy or small children. So it's gotten mingled in with some very common necking or lover's lane urban legends. But because this urban legend of Amy features her so heavily and her ghost has been seen there, these ghost stories are literally keeping this cold case that both Hamilton and I think Warren County sheriff's offices have not been able to solve. And It probably won't be at this point, unfortunately. So Amy's Ghost on Lick Road is a very tragic story, and I have no problem keeping it alive because it is a cold case, and I would very much love to see it solved.
Wow. See, I didn't even know about that. Of course, I probably wouldn't be going out there at night driving up and down the road.
Well, you'd have a lot of fellow visitors with you because it's a very popular place.
Huh.
The sheriff's office will come out, and especially during Halloween, they will be out there posted and turning people away. And also the locals, people do live on that road. They will report you if they see you down there. So
well, that's like the one in Oxford, the motorcycle that'll come up and over and down a little dip in the road. You see the headlight coming, and all of a sudden there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Mark was a deputy sheriff out there at the time, and they had got a report of something going on. So him and another deputy went out there, and supposedly, I guess there's two different stories that are mingled with this, and Mark would be able to tell you better what the other one was. But they seen something going on. All of a sudden, they didn't see it anymore. So Mark said, I'm going to walk down through the woods and come up on the other side down there to where this is supposed to be at. And the other deputy called him and said, I see it coming. And Mark walked out on the road to see it, and he said all he seen was something swinging a lantern back and forth. And he shined his light on it, and there was nothing there. Not a thing. He said it spooked him.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and he's deputy sheriff. So that's one of the stories that's out there. I'm sure that they know the stories behind it of why that's supposed to be like that, but lots of people has seen it, and there's nothing there. And the thing is a lot of the people would sit at the end of that road, and they would pull up in these people's driveway to turn around, stuff like that, or sit there and wait for it, and that's why they would end up calling the sheriff's department for them. They got tired of kids and stuff because of the stories hanging out there.
Yeah, that's is it the Oxford Light?
Yes.
Yeah, that's. I think James Willis actually investigated that with Ghosts of Ohio, but I don't remember what the outcome was. So, talking about places that we've investigated, I can talk about my investigation of this Sedamsville Rectory or Sedamsville Rectory. We still haven't gotten a correct answer on how to pronounce that name. So we say it both ways. We're just like, which way is it? We have no idea. So, I don't know. Would you be interested in hearing that ghost story?
Absolutely.
Sure, go ahead. And if people...
I know I've talked about it on this show before, so as I'm speaking, you're going to be like, I remember this. So, this is the doppelganger story. Does that ring any bells?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
no.
Okay.
And you've got 8 minutes, something like that, 10 maybe, tops.
Yeah. So, we're just going to get into our TARDIS and go back to 2011 when Wheatley was a puppy, and I had just adopted him. And I had the opportunity to go visit for the weekend Sedamsville Rectory or Sedamsville Rectory, and with a few friends. And there was only 5 of us that made the core group that was investigating. The first night there was a second group along with us that, I'm going to be honest, that Friday night, nothing was happening. Minding the pun, the place was dead. Nothing was happening. It was just a bunch of people, about 15 in total, sitting around in darkness, farting and staring at each other and waiting. And so I just took the opportunity to really just get acclimated to the location, and not much history is written on the place. It has a very short use life, basically, as a rectory. It was open from 1891 until 1989, when the parish was absorbed into a different one that was close by. The parish, which was Our Lady of Perpetual Help, was established by the German immigrants that wanted not only their own church that was German speaking, but also their own Catholic school that was German speaking. So that's what created this area. And Sedumsville was a big manufacturing place. Its heyday was very much during the Industrial Revolution. However, the flood of 1913 and then the Great Depression just wiped all industry out, including the original Our Lady of Perpetual Help church. So they ended up moving both the church and the school up onto Steiner Avenue, and that's where you'll find it today. And the buildings that still exist are Sedumsville Rectory, the nunnery, which is immediately next door, and also the old church, which is slowly decomposing, as well as the school. And you can buy the church for $1. Anyway.
Really?
Yep. It's going to take about $300,000 just to get it back up to code. And the city can't actually afford the insurance anymore, which is why they're willing to let it go for $1.
That's a huge place too, isn't it?
Well, the rectory is very big. I'm talking about the actual church. And that place is huge as well, but it needs a lot of work. It had some beautiful stained glass windows. They are gone. And it used to have a huge organ in it as well. Anyway, and it's on the National Register of Historic Places. I know it's on the state one as well. But so the rectory has had an interesting past. It's said that at most 3 priests died of natural causes in the building. It was a place where problem priests were relocated to in the Cincinnati diocese because it did have a very small congregation. And also we had a priest, Father McLeod, who was killed when crossing the train tracks. He didn't look both ways and was smashed into pieces by an oncoming train back in the 1890s. They also have the ghost of a child and an unidentified adult male also haunt Steiner Avenue outside of the rectory. So there should be a lot of activity given the history. It's very traumatic history. But on that Friday night, not a lot happened. And we kind of chalked it up to the people that we may have been with were giving off the wrong vibe. They weren't taking anything seriously. They weren't taking the trauma of the location seriously. And I find when that happens, not a lot happens. So the following night, it was just myself and 4 others. And out of the group of 5, only one was a man. And we started investigating around sunset, and so around 8. And we go upstairs first, and the rectory had a completely different feel that night. The north side felt very calm, and the south side felt very agitated. And while we were investigating and doing a voice box session, I look out into the hallway, and I see some pit bulls walking down the hallway on the 2nd floor.
Aww.
But they were shadows. They were shadow dogs. Because this location had been used as a Michael Vick dogfighting ring spot in the basement. And these were victims of this dogfighting ring walking through the building. And I could see their square heads, I could see their ripped off tails, and the ripped off ears, and it was very sad to see them. And they just looked into the room, saw me, and then kept walking. When we went downstairs to relocate down into the front parlor, I'm descending the staircase, and what caught my eye were an extremely shiny pair of shoes, and attached to them was an old grumpy looking priest, and he stared at me, and I looked at him. I stopped the caravan of people and went, does anybody else see him? Everyone couldn't. And he just stepped right back into the library and just disintegrated into darkness. But the crazy thing happened to one of the female members. All the lights were on. And I'm talking to the other male guest, or actually our host. And I'm looking at my friend across the way, and she is talking to one of the other people, investigators there. And I watched the investigator walk towards me again, and she was going to get money from her purse to pay for something. And then I see a duplicate of this investigator to a T. The shoes are the same, the pants are the same, the ghost hunting vest that she was wearing for her equipment was the same, her hairstyle, everything was the same, except for she kept her face away from the rest of the group, and her arms were tucked up onto her chest like she was holding her heart. And she's talking to my friend who is writing something down and not looking up. And according to my friend, she sounded exactly the same and just continued the conversation from earlier. But when she looked up, the person apparently had no face and just immediately darted away and back down the hallway and evaporated. So at some point, we had two of the same person, but one was a ghostly double. So a doppelganger.
Wow.
Yes. This was a very abridged telling of it because we only have 3 minutes left.
So
It really embarrassed the ghost for it to lose face like that.
wow,
Thank you,
Jeff.
Jeff.
So did the other people, any of them, get scared when they seen this, or?
Yes, we immediately packed up our items and then we've never been back there since.
Wow.
Yeah, my friend just put up her arms. She just threw them up and said, "I'm done. We're going home."
Wow. All right, our time is quickly running out. Barbara, Jeff, you got anything else to say or ask?
Not offhand.
Okay. Well, I listened to the two of the podcasts that's up there, and they're very interesting. Talking with Christina and Jen, and one of them, which one was it that is totally afraid of ghosts?
That would be Jen.
That's Jen. Okay. And because I was watching, I says, yeah, that's the one we want to take on an investigation.
Yeah, she's an awesome photographer, though.
So
can I run through our social media and where you can
I
find?
want you to give everything out right now.
All right. Okay, everyone, strap in. There's a lot of information. So the Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities, just throw that into your search engine and it will pull up a whole bunch of information. First will be our Kickstarter. We are running that until November 2nd. We have a whole bunch of different support tiers. This works like any other pledge for any other fundraiser. We have a pledge of $5 or more is a paranormal enthusiast that will give you a digital edition of the book and one location digital wallpaper. It goes up from there. We do have a few sketches that you can get. One from me, which is a monster sketch. There's one left that's available. We have one from Tim and a few from Christina as well. You can find us on Instagram.com/Cincy Cabinet of Curiosities. You can also find us on Twitter at Cin Cabinet Curio, CinCabinetCurio. And you can also find me at Red Cat Comics on all social media and at redcatcomics.com. That is my website.
All right. I want to thank you for being with us tonight. I want you to stay on until after we're off. We'll talk with you for a minute. And thanks, everybody, for listening tonight. This is Henry Foister.
Jeffrey Gould.
And Barbara Duncan.
See you next week at the same time. So good night, everybody. You've been listening to the Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. Join us again back next week at the same time for more of the Paranormal